set?
Sure.
Now call this meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, December 16th, 2024 Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Roll call. I, Chairman Davis, here. To my left, we have Deputy Mayor, Councilwoman Portia West. And to my immediate right, Mayor Stefan Roots. All members are present. Can I get a call for the approve the minutes of October 28th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. Now we will take public comment on agenda items only. Are there printouts for the agenda?
Outside, no.
Well, there's only really one item, so
Yeah.
we can just read it off.
Yeah.
That's fine. So on the agenda, I have a copy as well. Make sure that you both get a copy. The Budget and Finance Department will review financial status up to the year to date, general plans for 2024, including bank and fund account consolidations and closures. And we will now have a department presentation by our department head, our CFO, Mr. Richard Trump.
So the request to cover the year-to-date, you were forwarded the financial statements for October, which is, I was going to comment on, and more importantly, talk about how that's flowing into the end of the year as the first segment. So with that, you have the October financial statements. We're in the process of preparing the November financial statements. So I have provided to you, in front of you, hard copy of the October PowerPoint overview. And the first page is consistent with what you've seen every month. The second page is really the highlights for October, and of course, there's a typo, and it should say October instead of September. So I apologize for that. I need to fix that.
This page here?
Yes,
PowerPoint?
yes. So if you go to the second page, it will say September in the upper right corner, upper left corner. It really should say October. So and if the format is consistent with what we've talked through in past months, we have significant cash of $23 million at the end of October, and we have $16 million in the specialty accounts. We have an estimated, it's actually 54 vacancies. I got the final number a few minutes ago. It's 54 vacancies. Oh, man. Again, typo, should say October. And there are workers' comp, 7 on workers' comp. The revenues are $56 million, which is consistent. The expenses are $47 million, which are consistent. We expended a little bit more than normally at $6.8 million for the month, but half of that was for pensions. So the normal expenditures for day-to-day operations were consistent with prior months. From October into November, we're staging for the budget amendment number 2, which is on the agenda to be approved next week, this week. And we have we have solidified the year-end projections, more so that we're projecting that there will be an operating surplus. Again, in context of owing the unpaid pensions, but we're projecting that there will be an operating surplus coming through. And that is after planning to put additional funds into capital and additional funds into the pension. So the year is tracking very well. And I point back to the city began the year with an expectation of a negative 2.1 million. That has been erased to the point now where we're able to invest more money into capital and put more money into the pension and still project a surplus. So that's where we're at. And I would tell you that from a cash basis, we went from 23 million at the end of October to 24.9 million at the end of November. The financials for November are still being processed, but we know that piece of it. So we've improved our cash position. So that would be, just the overview is the financials are consistently doing well for the year. That would be the walk away. That would be the first segment that I wanted to talk about with the committee. And I'm ready to move to the next section.
Before you move to the next section, can you just touch base on areas of note, significant areas have open variables, amendment number 2, that's something that we'll be voting on this week. Can you just touch on that a little bit so that the public understands?
Oh, sure. So we're proposing a second budget amendment that ostensibly looks like it's neutral. It's just the same amount of adjustments, improving expenses, are also reducing, are increasing expenditures in certain areas in expenses. It neutralizes itself, and on the surface it's that simple, but it's intended to be able to allow for the city to invest more into the capital and more into the pensions. So that's really what's happening within that amendment. But it's consistent with the plans moving forward.
Thank you.
Is there any way to quantify, I guess, is the word, tax receipts? Taxes coming in as a reflection of our better financial position toward the end of the year, or is it too early to tally that up?
I'm not at a point where I can quantify it with certainty or with reasonable certainty right now. I'm not prepared for that. I would tell you it's not really the revenue side that is putting the city in the favorable position. It's really the expenses.
Okay, yeah, that's a better way of phrasing the question.
No, you were perfectly legit with what you asked, and it's a fair question. Not ready to give you the State of the Union in detail, but we do know that the expenses are coming in substantially less than what was initially projected. And there are some revenue sides, but it's ostensibly not the taxes. It's the earned income tax area, and it's a few other line items on the revenue side, but it's mostly savings in the expenses.
Okay.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to update the committee on is some of the plans that are being implemented to put the city in a good starting point for next year, for 2025. Each of the departments has been briefed on where the status is on the 2025 budget approval. They are starting to prepare implementation. So to the extent that they have vacancies, they are working with HR to start scheduling the process to get them hired for those vacancies. So that's part of the planning that's been being done in the last couple of weeks. And on the expense side, they have their budgets, they're reviewing them, they're working with their staffs and their accountants on scheduling this out. The budgets are going to be loaded the last week of December so that we will start having inside of our accounting software the actual budgets. For 2024, my understanding is they didn't go in till April, May, and I ended up helping to load them in June. So we are getting a better jump start on the year. People are going to have accurate budget codes to be working with, budget thresholds. So we expect to be hitting the ground running on the financial side for January. One thing we're doing this year is we're going to load monthly budget numbers as opposed to just the year end. So they'll have periodic treatments, the periodic ability to check their numbers, and we're going to have the monthly reviews with the departments to start out. We also are working within Edmunds to design the reporting structure, so there will be some more formal reports available for decision makers to work with. So we're on the administrative side, we're structuring that and planning to have that happen. So that's some of the control pieces. I gave you another handout for something that we're going to focus on that led to confusion at all levels of decision making. We have, and what it is an assessment of the bank accounts that we have, and there are 52 bank accounts within the city. And we're using 5 different banks with 52 different bank accounts. 15 of those accounts are untouchable because they're related to the bankruptcy and the debt. So of the 37 that are controllable, we've identified 16 that should be closed, and the dollars will be consolidated. There are accounts that haven't been used, haven't had any activity for 10 years, 12 years. There's incidental monies in some of them. There's other funds in others that we just need to consolidate it so that decision makers have a simple way to look at where the money is and how much there is to work with. So that's what the this second sheet that you have is a list of all the bank accounts and the list of the 16 that are planned to be closed. There's 3 that we have to do more research on to see whether they have value to stay open or not. Then we've also identified that part of the complexities that we've been dealing with in 2024 of identifying where the money is sitting and where the accounting is sitting has been because of writing checks out of one bank account, for example, but the money is being spread out over dozens of different accounting funds. And so it made it messy to really identify where or how much the expenses really are and how they're tracking. Are they matching with the grant revenues? There is getting a little weedy, but it got a little complicated and messy to figure out where things really were as opposed to where we wanted them to be. So this is part of the process of consolidating the funds into fewer bank accounts so it's easier to manage. We get better leverage with the bankers. We're looking to close one of those banks, one of those 5 banks. We have 5 accounts or 6 accounts in that one bank. They're very difficult to work with. And so for those reasons, we're consolidating everything. We get better interest rate with our primary bank. So those are the reasons why we want to consolidate those 6. But nevertheless, we're evaluating all the amount of accounts that we have. But then the last sheet is there are 71 different places that money could have been put into throughout the year that really didn't serve an accounting purpose, a finance purpose, a business purpose. And it was well-intended, but there's a list there, and it just didn't need to happen. So what we're looking to do is consolidate into a limited number of funds so we can track it more appropriately, have less work, so we're more efficient with our resources. And we also want to do a little bit of changing with the banking so that we have some of the accounts we're using activity with. It requires extra accounting to get it into the right place because we generally use one bank account to write all the checks. So the intent is that a certain selected specialty accounts should be able to write checks that come right out of that bank account for that purpose. So that's some of the nuance that we're also working through. But it's all designed to be more efficient, more effective, and give people information that can be managed with and take less time and effort to close the books and keep track of. So that's the intent. And I'm showing you a lot of detail, but it's really to support the basic intent, starting here with some of the controls. So with that, that's really the questions.
Yeah, so the first question I have, out of the 52 bank accounts, do you have a total amount of money that you calculated have been found in all the bank accounts combined?
It's largely off of what we've been reporting the totals. We're just going to consolidate them. Some of these accounts have $300, $200, $150. But there is one account, for example, had 1.6 million because that's where the state puts the money in, but it hasn't been moved out into the general fund. It's just sitting in another bank account. So we're trying to consolidate that. So it runs the gamut from a couple of dollars to, I said, the 1.6 million. I want to be clear, we didn't find that kind of money. We're just trying to consolidate it so that we have more leverage and less work in keeping track of it.
On that last page, that 71 funds.
Yes.
Funds don't equate to accounts, do they?
No, actually funds equate to buckets.
Okay.
Garage, my analogies I've used in the past with storage sheds and garage sheds, it's a shed of a whole garage complex of outside storage. It's a separate shed. Or it's a separate group of sheds, and now you can have all kinds of shelves or the equivalent general accounting. This is the tip of the iceberg. It can be buried inside of these places in multiple different accounts.
Just looking at them, most of them look very old. Is there significant money in most of those, any of those, or some of them just at zero?
Well, it would be reused every year. So it's whatever got in there earlier in the year. We stopped some of it. So the simple answer is no, there's not significant money in any of them, but it's enough to make it a hassle that you have to find it and you have to keep track of it and you have to account for it. And again, we're trying to eliminate the possible places that errors can happen. Somebody slips a digit, and instead of putting it in Fund 04, and they put it into 40, well, we have to go searching to find where it ended up happening or where it went. So again, all this gets cleaned up at year end in an audit process. So it's not as if funds are misdirected or lost, or it's just ineffective, inefficient is what it is. And it allows for better controls to have it where it should be from the start, as opposed to more options of it to be misplaced and then you have to go find it. If that helps.
Yes,
the-
part of the process is eliminating some of these funds.
Yes.
A lot of them, it looks like, are just really old,
Yes.
just by the name.
Right. This is housekeeping. This is housekeeping designed in the long run, and let's say the medium run, to be more effective and more efficient.
So if you opened up a new fund, would it take the number of a fund that's being replaced?
Yeah.
Is that how that works? I
Yeah.
don't know.
We have 99 of them to pick from, and we use roughly a dozen plus
Okay.
actively, and the rest of them are just,
Okay.
oh, oops, this is a room in the storage shed that we have to clean out every year. We just don't need things to be misplaced and have to go find them. So again, I just want to reiterate, it has nothing to do with losing money or mismanagement. It has everything to do with making it more efficient and effective.
So my question is in regards to the management process, who or what determines where the funds go once they have been consolidated?
We would still use the normal process of approval. So we're not changing the way bills get approved. We're not changing the way or where the Commonwealth deposits their money or the normal process that happens internally with depositing fees or fines or anything we get. This is just basically, instead of having the in and the outs go straight through, we're actually squeezing into the middle so that we have more of a defined process. We're trying to make it simpler, but it doesn't change who or how bills get paid, and it doesn't change who or how money is deposited. Those controls have been in place, and we've tweaked them, but ostensibly they're the same.
And how often do you look at these, you know, track these? You track them throughout the year, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, in all honesty, this is going to make my life easier because now I don't have to go looking at 52 bank accounts to try to get a sense of, oh, did they change a lot? Didn't they change a lot? I can narrow it down to fewer bank accounts. The accountants who do the work, instead of having 52 accounts to reconcile every month, it's going to be down into the 30s. That's what.
Reconciliation is done on a monthly basis?
Yes, we reconcile all the bank accounts on a monthly basis, and so it's just that many less. Even though they might not have much money in them, you still have to go get the paperwork from the bank, open up the mail, do the process, get it double-checked. It's still a process that we can eliminate 16 times in the month.
I'm gonna ask my question again because maybe you did answer it, maybe I just didn't hear it in a way.
Okay, that's fine.
So if you're getting rid of 16 bank accounts, and some of those bank accounts may or may not have funds in them, $100, $200,
Right.
who decides or what decides where that money goes once those bank accounts no longer exist?
Those bank accounts, and I'm sorry I wasn't clear, those bank accounts that have balances will go into the general fund basic bank account, period. General fund money will go into the general fund.
So is it safe to say that all the funds that will be consolidated are all general fund accounts? Because if you're getting rid of 16 accounts, that
Yes.
means all the money that were in those 16 accounts are going to go directly to our general fund. But do they all belong in our general fund?
Yes, I'm looking down through the list, and there's two that are reserve funds that we're researching, that we have to see what type of funds they are and whether they were dedicated to a purpose. So I'll have to double check two of the three that we're not sure of. But as a general rule, they're going into the general fund.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are all the questions that I had. Any more questions from the committee? Nope. So those are all the questions that I had. Any more questions from the committee? Sorry.
Yeah.
Any questions from members of the public? Public comment on anything that we just mentioned today in this meeting?
Can you mention something from the prior meeting also, clarification?
Yes, ma'am. The prior budget meeting that we, yes, ma'am.
Chance to look. That print was so small last time, I have to look at things with a magnifying glass. Now, I was looking at this chart right here that was presented last meeting. I see dollars, but I don't know what the dollar amount categories refer to. There was no grid that showed this blue represents this, this little yellow represents this. So is there a grid somewhere that talks about these numbers for comparisons from 24 to 25?
Yes, it's on other slides that may not, or it doesn't appear to be part of that package.
Well, how will I know what that is?
We have to provide them to you.
Okay, now I'm asking for it then.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's number one. Number two, you're talking about revenue and so forth. I know when people do budgets, you know, they don't have a place where they can put stuff, they call it other. I'm looking at your other. Your other is larger than your projected amounts on this general budget fund revenue. So it says other, all other combined. What is that? What, all other combined? What is the other combined?
So let me start with context.
Mr. Traub, you have to come to the mic. Can't hear you.
All right, we'll share the mic here. Ms.
Okay, go ahead.
The initial context of what Ms. Smith is referring to was to basically show that all the other is really not changing from year to year that significantly. The list, if I may, is, let me just see if this package includes it. There is a detailed list of all the other revenues that can be provided that cross-references down to the different groupings. There's a detail that rolls up to this. And so we can provide that to you. But that was the intent, that the other was just everything other than the biggest reason why the money changed from year to year. Sure.
Now, the last thing, I'm just looking at the, excuse me, the highlights, this the sheet right here. And it says something to the fact that additional 17.4 million in pipeline. I'm not clear what a pipeline is. I don't know what that means.
Those are grants that are in the works, that are either being applied for, that we don't have an answer to yet, or things that are expected to be applied for later in 2025 that are not finalized, aren't exact, those types of things.
Is there a list of these pipeline additions?
Yes,
Is that to the public?
I would think so.
Okay,
Sure.
I'd like to have that also. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just have the one question. I was just wondering how we are making out with our delinquent tax collection. Are we, you know, I don't know, before we weren't getting anything, and now are we moving forward with that, or how is that working for us?
In light of some of the questions that came out here with this lady and with what was question, I'm suggesting we have a budget committee and I'll give a presentation on the status of the real estate delinquents and the rubbish delinquents. A more formal presentation. But the general comment would be is we identified some areas that we can make improvements on, implementing process, changing some of the legal aspects that we're allowed to do. And so those are starting to be implemented. We're expecting 25 to be better than 24. And 24, I'll say, generally is holding its own. But I'm suggesting we do a more formal presentation with the next committee meeting.
Okay, sounds good. And for the sake of time, I know we have to get to deliberative. Do we have any more public comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none. Any public comments or questions from any department heads or anybody else in the public? Hearing and seeing none. Make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.